Hello and welcome. My name is Meepless, they, she, he, and this is Literally Graphic. And here we are, looking at the year ahead and setting some very short-term goals, namely a January TBR. But Meepless, you may be saying, you still haven't reviewed all the books in last month's TBR, and to that I would have to agree. That said, I did in fact read them. I'm also leaving room in January's schedule to post a review of After the Rain, and besides running out of time, reading Barefoot Gen Volume 2, I was reminded why I generally don't review mangas volume by volume, because while it was interesting and thought-provoking, it is a very daunting and often impossible task to review middles of stories, so we are continuing to stick to initial thoughts and series wrap-ups, so you'll have to wait just a little bit longer to actually get my thoughts on that series. Looking ahead, I'm really hoping that I am able to stay on track for this month, bolstered by having a good chunk of time to myself and away from work, because January is a big month for not review videos. To briefly touch on what you can expect on that front, ideally, I'll be putting together a fourth quarter / 2022 not comics reading wrap up. Spoiler, I did complete my reading goals for this year. I was also hoping to do a manga reading wrap up, as I had a growing interest in looking at those stats as well. Plus, I just finished my initial script for my New Year's goals video, but I wanted to let it ferment a bit longer to be sure I wasn't missing anything. I also need to post my next Black Comics Creator TBR video, which was really due a while back. So that's like a whole month of extra content, so we shall see. I really am trying to get away from 3 videos a week, even if the algorithm does seem to favor it. But on to my promised TBR. Looking at the month, I calculated I had room for 9 reviews. I actually was able to hit all my monthly reading goals in 6 books. But of course, I have that one makeup review, so that does still mean I had 2 slots to just read whatever struck my fancy. So fun. Starting with the manga, as I tend to do, I really want to pick up the Sex Ed 120% trilogy by Kikiki Tataki, despite my library not having it, which isn't necessarily a given, as they do have graphic novels about sexy things sometimes. Otherwise, the English translation of this manga series was published by Yen Press between 2020 and 2021, and the trilogy clocks in at a total of 390 pages. I first heard about this trilogy via a Chatty AF podcast episode, link in the description. Obviously, there's some queer stuff going on, and also discussion of abortion, so there's a lot of things that make this trilogy a must check out for me. The synopsis for the first volume is, quote, "Gym teacher Sushi Sensei has one mission: help with Japan's terrible modern sex education standards. The problem is, her students barely know their birds from their bees. Between a girl who already has a girlfriend, a hardcore BL lover, and a girl who only cares about cats, Sushi Sensei has her work cut out for her." My second manga pick for the month is actually going to be Yatsuba, Volume 1. Initially translated in 2003, the edition I will be reading from the library was published in 2009 by Yen Press and is 224 pages long. A very popular series. I did try and read it once before due to the hype and found it a bit too wholesome / silly for my taste at the time. That said, times they are a-changin', and the world is a dark, dark place. So I figured now might be a good time to give it a retry. Apparently there's at least 15 books in this series so far, and one was published just last year. But the synopsis for this volume is, quote, "Yatsuba moved with daddy to a new house from our old house, way over there. And moving's fun because people wave. Ooh. And Yatsuba met these nice people next door and made friends to play with. One of them acted like one of those bad strangers Daddy told Yatsuba not to go with, but it was okay in the end. I hope we get to play a lot and eat ice cream. And. Oh yeah, you should come play with Yatsuba too." End quote. So, we shall see about that. Moving right along to the other end of the rating spectrum, we have this month's addition to my Vertigo read-through, namely Saga of the Swamp Thing, Volume 3, by Alan Moore, and many others, who I do profile in my reviews. Covering issues 35 to 42, these issues appear to have been published between 1985 and 1986, and the trade runs 205 pages long. Stories included are The Nuke Face Papers, Growth Patterns, Still Waters, The Curse, Fish Story, Southern Change, Strange Fruit, Windfall, Bogeyman, and the questionably titled final issue Ghost Dance. This is also the trade that includes the very first introduction of Hellblazer, which is obviously a point of note. I'll actually be taking a short break next month from Swamp Thing to reread and review Hellblazer Volume 1, another Vertigo series I hope to get through a bit more sporadically through the years to come. My other mainstream pick, which is also my Black Comics creators pick for the month, is Nubia, Real One, by L.L. McKinney and Robyn Smith. We are apparently keeping things DC this month. Nubia was published in 2021 and runs 207 pages long. Much hyped, I'm really looking forward to reading this volume. Synopsis, quote, "Can you be a hero if society doesn't see you as a person?" Nubia has always been a little bit different. As a child, she showcased Amazonian-like strength by pushing over a tree to rescue her neighbor's cat. But despite having similar abilities, the world has no problem telling her that she's no Wonder Woman. And even if she was, they wouldn't want her. Every time she comes to the rescue, she's reminded of how people see her as a threat. Her moms do their best to keep her safe, but Nubia can't deny the fire within her, even if she's a little awkward about it sometimes. Even if it means people assume the worst. When Nubia's best friend, Keisha, is threatened by a boy who thinks he owns the town, Nubia will risk it all, her safety, her home, and her crush on the cute kid in English class, to become the hero society tells her she isn't. The witty and powerful voice behind A Blade So Black, L.L. McKinney, and with endearing and expressive art by Robyn Smith, comes a vital story for today about equality, identity, and kicking it with your squad, end quote. My Indigenous comics creators pick is Kwändŭr, which I did look up on YouTube, and I'm hoping I'm not butchering it, by Cole Pauls, published by Conundrum Press in 2022. It is 131 pages long. I first heard about Cole Pauls when they did the art for and were spotlighted by Toronto Comics Art Festival in 2021. And if you haven't already seen them, I would highly recommend you check out my review of his previous work, Pizza Punks and Dakwada Warriors. Paul's style, perspective, and mission are all super unique and really stand out from the crowd. So as soon as I saw this book pop up on my library's recent acquisitions page, I knew I had to read it ASAP. The synopsis is, quote, Indigenous Voices Award winner Cole Pauls returns with a robust collection of stories that celebrate the cultural practices and experiences of Dene and Arctic peoples. Gathering Paul's comics from magazines, comic festivals, and zine-making workshops, these comics are his most personal work yet. You'll learn stories about the author's family, racism, and identity, Yukon history, winter activities, Southern Tushan language lessons, and cultural practice. Have you ever wanted to learn how to knuckle hop? Or to acknowledge and respect the Indigenous land you're on? Or how to be an ally to Indigenous people? Well, gather round and hear this Kwändŭr, end quote. Then we have my anti-ableism pick for this month, which also happened to be a very queer pick as well. The much-hyped Kimiko Does Cancer, a graphic memoir by Kimiko Tobimatsu and Keet, Geniza, published by Arsenal Pulp Press in 2020. This nonfiction book comes in at a very surprising, to me at least, 96 pages, but that does seem to balance out my month very well. The synopsis is, quote, at the age of 25, Kimiko Tobimatsu is a young, queer, mixed-race woman with no history of health problems whose world was turned upside down when she was diagnosed with breast cancer. In an instant, she became immersed in a new and complicated life of endless appointments, evaluations, and treatments, and difficult conversations with her partner and parents. Kimiko knew that this wasn't what being 25 was supposed to be like, but then she didn't have a choice. With tender illustrations by Keet, Geniza, Kimiko Does Cancer is a graphic memoir that upends the traditional cancer narrative from a young woman's perspective, confronting issues such as dating while in menopause, navigating work and treatment, and talking to well-meaning friends, healthcare professionals, and other cancer survivors with viewpoints different from her own. Not one for pink ribbons or runs for the cure, Kimiko seeks connection with the cancer community while also critiquing the mainstream cancer experience. Honest and poignant, Kimiko Does Cancer is about finding one's way out of a health crisis. End quote. Then we have some books that I've had tabbed on my library's website for a while now. First off, we have What Remains, Personal and Political Histories of Colombia by Camilo, Aguirre, published by Uncivilized Books. It is 186 pages long, and Goodreads had literally no information on it at all, so thanks this time goes to worldcat.org. I haven't actually heard anything about this book, but when it popped up on my library's website, I was intrigued. So here we are. Let's just read through the summary and see if your interest is piqued at all. Quote, What Remains is an innovative graphic novel that weaves documentary and memoir forms to capture the socio-political fabric of Colombia spanning 200 years. Camilo Aguirre dips in and out of pivotal historical periods, all while skillfully interweaving family histories and anecdotes of students, union workers, and guerrilla fighters. He creates a critical, unflinching vision of Colombia that is profoundly mobilizing in its search for resolution. Aguirre is hopeful throughout, but he refuses to step into the trap of fictitious optimism. The people and the families represent a detailed composite portrait of life in Colombia, sketched from opposing ends of the political spectrum. Colombia is inextricable from its people's complex lives and identities, as well as the lives of Aguirre and his family. Aguirre narrates the complexities from a distant Minneapolis. He details the tides of power and politics, from American and corporate interventions to internal hierarchies of wealth and power, and finally to the impact of emerging globalization and neoliberalism. The criminalization and persecution of union workers and students propagate amidst these political phases. What Remains poses a question. Aguirre answers through a profoundly personal lens and demonstrates that what remains of Colombia are the rich and varied lives of its people. End quote. And my final book for this month to read and review is Numb to This, a memoir of a mass shooting by Kindra Neely. Published by Little Brown Ink at the end of this year, it is 304 pages long and is another book I found purely through my library's purchasing. Because of where I grew up and when, I immediately felt a need to read this book. As usual, it always strikes me as odd when Goodreads, WorldCat, and my library do not agree on the demographics for books, but in this case, Goodreads says this is an adult book, but both my library and WorldCat and Goodreads' own readers also enjoyed section mark this as a young adult title. The summary is, quote, This searing graphic memoir portrays gun violence through a fresh lens, giving it urgency, humanity, and a very personal hope. Kindra Neely never expected it to happen to her. No one does. Sure, she'd sometimes been close to gun violence, like the one in the house down the street from her childhood home in Texas was targeted in a drive-by shooting, but now she lived in Oregon, where she spent her time swimming in rivers with friends or attending classes at the bucolic Umpqua Community College. And then one day it happened. A mass shooting shattered her college campus. Over the span of a few minutes on October 1st, 2015, 8 students and a professor lost their lives. And suddenly, Kindra became a survivor. The empathetic and ultimately hopeful graphic memoir recounts Kindra's journey forward from those few minutes that changed everything. It wasn't easy. Every time Kindra took a step towards peace and wholeness, a new mass shooting devastated her again. Las Vegas, Parkland. She was hopeless at times, feeling as if no one was listening. Not even the worldwide demonstration March for Our Lives. But finally, Kindra learned that for her, the path towards hope wound through art, helping others, and sharing her story. End quote. Otherwise, other books that I am reading but not reviewing yet. As I already mentioned, I'll be slowly but surely making my way through Barefoot Gen. I've also been requesting Full Metal Alchemist volumes one at a time, so I'll probably read 1 or 2 of those this month as well. That series has so far earned me the most comments on public transit of any of my public reading. I think that covers just about everything on my end. What are y'all looking to read this month? By y'all, keep reading, and organized end capitalist depression. And as always, Literally Graphic is created on land that should be given back to the traditional landholders, which in this case is, to my knowledge, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Anishinaabe people, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat Nation.